A little over a month ago, I said that I would read your story, your webtoon, your comic, your manhwa, manga, whatever it may be. And here we finally are. So I read 20 amateur, independent, self-published stories, ranging from webtoons to comics, mangas, etc, etc. Here is the first 10. I had an absolute brilliant time with this. I thought it was very interesting seeing a lot of people's works and basically just putting themselves out there, whether it be for fun, professionally, trying to create stories that they love, anything really. And there was a wide variety of different storytelling experiences that I got to enjoy. The first 10 of these series will be available within the description. If you are interested, I highly recommend you go check it out, give them some support. If you don't see your story in here, I still have another 10 to talk about. They'll be featured within a future video. I thought I'd break it up so this video isn't obnoxiously long. Starting off with the first one, High Octane. This is a webtoon with one chapter, it's a short story, and this was a beautiful way to start this whole experience. This short story is a prime example of someone just flexing their artistic prowess. It doesn't really have much of a story to it because it is a short one, but it's more so paying homage to a lot of other stories with how their characters are depicted or maybe how they're framed or paneled, and everything is kind of just beautifully rendered. It's incredibly artistic, it's got a beautiful color palette, very vibrant, and it kind of trails off into this absurdity of action and two individuals fighting. So the story is very simple. Our main character Jin is very excited to go to this movie. He's been saving up to it for quite some time. The date of this movie, when it comes to, is on the exact same date as his grandfather's funeral. So he's kind of conflicted, but his sister Faye gets wind of this and realizes her brother is going to ditch her at this funeral and go to see this movie. So they get into an argument, and this breaks out into a full, over-exaggerated, flashy fight between them. Very shonen-esque, very Dragon Ball Z, just superpowers, high energy, quite literally high octane moments clashing together. It is short, sweet and simple, beautiful to experience, and just a great kind of flex in artistry, to be honest. Just based on the artwork alone, I'd be very interested to see a full story from this creator if they ever decided to do one. Nonetheless, I really enjoyed it. Great introduction to this whole experience and a lot of comedy within it. A lot of quirky moments that I found rather amusing. Next up, we have Hidden Hero. This is a webtoon with 9 chapters, incredibly stylistic artwork. I mean, just look at this. This has incredible identity, and this is something that I was really hoping to see within a lot of these stories, is how unique a lot of artistry can be to individuals, and this is a prime example of it. There's a ton of beautiful color within here representing their characters and emotions and situations, scenarios, and it feels very well crafted. The story follows 2 different characters, Peach and Quince. They find an individual within their backyard that is actually a cannibal, but there's more to this than one would actually seem. The idea of it more so revolves around the idea of being a hero, but these first 9 chapters more so is building character, understanding what this individual within the backyard actually is, having a connection to our main characters, and looking oddly similar. I am very much a sucker for artistic flair and usage of color, because there's so many incredible ways that you can build atmosphere with color. This is one of those times, with this unique character design, how color is being utilized and how it transitions into panels is very beautiful. I hope this creator continues forward with their story, perfecting their craft and really dialing in their skills to what they see fit. There's a beautiful identity here, and I enjoyed every moment of it. Next up, we have Kawumm. This is a webtoon, more so a manga, with 5 chapters. Already, you might notice something. This looks oddly familiar to Tokyo Ghoul. I don't want to say that this story was built off the conception of Tokyo Ghoul or Sue Ishida's artistry, but I have a suspicion that it was. This seems like a story that comes from a creator that was a big fan of Tokyo Ghoul or Sue Ishida's artwork and was obviously very inspired. And with that, they've able to build up their own artistry in a way that is very familiar and similar to Sue Ishida's artwork, as you can probably tell, while also retaining a bit of their own identity and crafting it in different directions. There's kind of a finely tuned balance between there. It's not one-to-one Sue Ishida, of course. There is moments where you'll feel like, yeah, this seems very inspired. This isn't a bad thing. If anything, the artwork is absolutely incredible. Just look how stylistic or gritty it gets. These character profiles are incredibly well rendered, and just the framing of panel works is gorgeous. The story plays into some very familiar tropes, archangels and demons, but also feels somewhat similar to Tokyo Ghoul in a lot of ways, but just a little bit all over the place. There is a lot of information given to you. A lot of it is very front-loaded, and while you're oogling all of these pictures and this artwork, sometimes you get a little bit lost. The first chapter is a really good introduction, but very quickly you start to shift perspectives, and if for whatever reason you're not paying attention or you're too focused on the artistry, you kind of lose sight of everything. There's a lot of information that you kind of need to take in. It's very quick to ramp up into certain action sequences or development points, and it can be kind of scary. But overall, I think it's a very well orchestrated story, very nicely designed, and has a fundamental understanding of how manga can be utilized in such brilliant and incredible ways, and a story that is building into some very interesting avenues. I think over time, with getting comfortable with telling the story through its characters and building connections and identities, that's when you'll see a lot of the beauty come out from it. There's just a little bit too much to digest right at the beginning, but nonetheless very intriguing. Next up, we have Unsounded. This is a comic, 17 chapters, and to be honest, this wholeheartedly blew me away. I was not expecting this level of quality or professionalism or anything really. This genuinely just feels like a comic book that has been published through and through. Just based off these images, you can see what I mean. Everything is insanely high quality and well rendered. It's ridiculous. How this is not more popular or more recognized or officially published, I'm not entirely sure, but it does have its own website, so you can read all 17 chapters that have incredible length to them as well, with a really intriguing story. Mind you, I'm not the biggest comic book fan. I haven't really been able to indulge in all too many, but this was a really fun time. It's super fantasy driven, very D&D/World of Warcraft, typical fantasy, but I absolutely love the color palette being used. I love the setting. I love the unique and interesting monsters that come through, and even our two main characters, Seta and Duan. I'm not too sure how to pronounce those. Very identifiable individuals. Seta is this young, brash, obnoxious girl that is kind of a thief. She's very mischievous, gets into a lot of trouble, doesn't listen to people, has a very over-the-top personality, and her companion, someone that's protecting her and traveling with her, Duan, is this undead, zombie-like individual, very mysterious, hooded, but ultimately quite powerful. The way they work together, I think, is brilliant. They bring such a unique life to the story, carry you through the trials and tribulations of this fantasy-driven world. It is very harsh. It took me by surprise how brutal of a depiction a lot of things or concepts within this story actually are. Unfortunately, I can't show those brutal pictures as much as I would love to, but they do those emotions, those type of feelings they would have to that idea very well. They do it justice. Little side note, I really like in-world vernacular, slang, dialogue that is unique to characters, etc., right? I think it builds such an incredible identity to characters and a uniqueness between them. Not every story has it or needs it, but when it does, I usually really appreciate it. And in this case, same thing. So much so where it's a little bit overwhelming and it's kind of difficult to flow through the story because it's used so much, which isn't the worst thing to ever exist. It's not like a big blanketed red mark for your story. You can easily look over it. But for myself, I somewhat found it difficult to flow through the story at a comfortable pace because I had to reread certain sections just to make sure that I understood what was being said because of how much in-world vernacular is being used for this character or that character. Seta, for example, has very broken English that is filled with so much slang and shortened words and things that are cut off, so you kind of have to take your time with it. It's not a negative because I feel like it perfectly builds into her identity and why she actually talks like that. It's very entertaining, it's very enjoyable. Sometimes just detours your reading flow. Overall, incredibly impressed, beautiful artwork, very enjoyable world building and story, and I am more than excited to see more. Moving on, we have Unfinished Business. This is a webtoon with one chapter. It's a very short story about a samurai avenging what I believe to be a fallen comrade by hunting down and fighting against a monster. While there isn't much of a story here, the artwork, very pretty. Very reminiscent to a lot of other samurai stories in their artwork, but there's a specific style of artistry that goes into samurai stories that I think has been captured really well here. It's rustic in a lot of ways. It feels incredibly alive within a lot of samurai stories, how it wants to portray its scenery and do a lot of its panel work and really just capture the essence of swordsmanship, of honor, of the samurai lifestyle. But then it's clashed with this oddly eerie depiction of this monster, so vulgar and horrifying, and when it clashes with this samurai, it just feels unreal. It feels like a really old painting or this odd clash of atmospheres that for me I think works brilliantly. Again, very simple story, but a beautiful showcase of artistry and one that I would love to see expanded in a lot of different avenues. Now rolling into the next one, we have the Kybalion Kybalion. Very much apologize if I butchered that name, but this is a webtoon with 4 chapters. Love this. I think this was just old school brilliance at its finest. Very Dragon Ball, very shonen, capturing that same essence. I enjoyed it. It's about a main character called Jay, 9 personalities within himself. And these personalities are a emotional reflection of himself, each somewhat embodying a different aspect. You don't really get what those aspects are, how much they fuel into one another, but in some way, shape or form, they are connected to our main character. And it is said that every 100 years or so, a being will exist with this type of birthmark, very reminiscent of Bleach in a way, and they would have access to abilities, and they would have to utilize it for good. These 9 individuals come out and really give our main character a tough time. At first they try to help, but one of them sticks out as being a little bit different, has a lot of anger within himself, a lot of anger to humanity even, and this starts to spiral into a really bad path and takes it into a destructive way. So much so that this one person will go to kill all of the other individuals that are split off from the original main character. This is where our story picks up with Jay trying his best to stop this person and trying to figure out why he's even doing this to begin with, stopping him from gaining a power that is very much overwhelming. I really enjoyed this story because it kind of channels the childhood roots, you know, old school, early Weekly Shonen Jump, the Dragon Ball, the Bleach, the action orientation that surrounds everything, but then it has this own kind of sense of grittiness to it that really comes out of left field. Like, you see it there with the severity of the story being flashed every so often, but when one character gets very angry, very upset, filled with rage, the artwork starts to shift respectfully to that rage and kind of pulls it out in all of its rawest form. And I think it creates such a unique balance between a lot of these emotional moments, the more simple or everyday life type of moments. The panel work, however, is what really surprised me, because this is not something that you just pick up. It's not something that you can just mimic from other stories. You really have to learn this, especially for manga and its depiction, because there's so many unique ways that you can angle and frame your characters in motion specifically as well, but for climatic moments, for reveals, for shock value, whatever it may be. And this creator has a great understanding of how to frame all of that, which I absolutely love. This is a really fun read. I think a lot of people might enjoy it. If you're looking for old school shonen and paying homage and respect to it, you're going to be right at home. Next up, we have Kulay. Apologies if I butchered that again. This is a webtoon with only 4 chapters, but in total it has 36 parts. So realistically, kind of like 36 chapters. This is a really simple slice of life story, but one that's filled with so much character, life, and identity. So we follow 2 young children, Paula, who is a 10-year-old boy, very outgoing, very loud, very obnoxious, and a girl called Kahel, apologies once again, and they go to the same school. Paula's personality makes it very difficult for him to make friends because a lot of people think he's scary, but in reality he just wants to have fun, he just wants to make friends, he just wants to enjoy himself, and that's kind of the process of this story. It's just young children having fun at school and trying to live their life without responsibilities, and it's a breath of fresh air in that regard, especially because artistically the representation for it is beautiful. It's very bright and vibrant and colorful. It feels so incredibly identifiable, and I think fits the story perfectly. There's not all too much I can say about it. It's a sweet story, is kind of the full package, and all around just a fun time. Now this next story is Kentucky Fried Evil. Webtoon, one-shot, short story. I did not know what I was going to get. All I seen was a picture with a chicken on it, and he was kind of grinning at me. When I read the chapter, I was still kind of confused, but very much entertained. This is one of those stories that feels like it was conceptualized out of a fever dream, but you couldn't fully understand the dream, so you kind of just filled in the blanks when you were awake. And this is that story in all the best ways. It's just chaoticness. It's just a humanoid chicken fighting a doo-doo monster, but then it has a sprinkle of the overindulgence of humans, how they're breaking humanity because they're being so selfish, and nature itself is being corrupted because of it and morphing into obviously the doo-doo monster, and they are here to return this vengeful dish back onto humans. The idea of a chicken and the absurdity of it is brilliant, especially a humanoid one. There already is a manga with just a rooster itself. This is completely different. I love it. The absurdity, the chaoticness, the irony of how I described it as well when you read the story and what actually happens. Very enjoyable. For a lot of people it might be too sporadic and all over the place and just an odd experience, but for some it might be up your alley, most definitely. So moving on, this story is called Last Grains of Sand. It is a one-shot short story manga together and is absolutely beautiful. I love this. Out of these 10 stories, this is personally my favorite. It is filled to the brim with atmosphere and emotion and just feels suffocating in very great ways. It's hard to really explain what this story is because if anything, it feels more of like a personal experience, something that is being retold from potentially the creator. And if it isn't, I'm even more impressed because I don't think you could really try to mimic this type of relationship, this type of conversation, or even this altercation in general if you haven't actually experienced it, because it goes all the way down to the nuanced interactions between two characters and the odd family dynamic that is being built. There is a lot of tension here, and because of this unique art style that has this very fitting, depressing note over the top of it, it creates this very nervous situation, and you're kind of on the edge of your seat like, what is going to happen? The story follows Andrew, who's a young man who goes to see his dying mother, and clearly their relationship isn't the best, even with their mother being in this very bad position and kind of on her final legs. There's some problems, to put lightly. There's a lot of history between them, deep-rooted trauma. You kind of see this escalate just a little bit with how stubborn the mother is and somewhat how introspective our main character Andrew is. It's slow and methodical, but brilliant. It feels like an oddly uncomfortable slice into someone's life, but there's just enough artistic flair and interpretation within there to fill everything out that it doesn't feel too uncomfortable. Like this is a story that you shouldn't be reading, but it's pulling all of the potential experiences and maybe even trauma that the creator might have had. Not to say that that's what they've experienced, but it feels that personal. Of course, I don't want to talk for them or what the story's purpose is, and my interpretation could be entirely wrong, but regardless, whatever your intention was with this story, if you are watching this, it was beautiful. I absolutely loved it, and I think a lot of people will really be surprised with it. I will endlessly recommend you all to check it out. Give it a chance. This video is already insanely long, so you can see why I only wanted to talk about 10 and not the full 20, the remaining 10 that I have. This last series is called Nights of Nothing. This one kind of surprised me because I was very caught off guard. At this point, I've gone through 9 other stories and all of them filled to the brim differently in some enjoyable way. So I kind of just took my time with this and I got caught out. I actually got duped. Usually you can see when plot twist is going to happen, or this thing is going to happen, or that thing in the story, or that fork in the narrative, right? This one was hidden so well, but in such plain sight that it just catches you off guard. It throws you into this world that feels very familiar to an isekai, where there's kind of like a leveling system, light RPG elements, the fact that if you die, you get respawned, everything's kind of emotionally voided, so there's no real purpose or indication of what you should be doing, no goal, no motivation, but our main character Prince basically just wants to fight. He wants to have fun, he wants to gather power, he wants to conquer and pretty much be the strongest within this fake world, and they make this known very early on, and he comes across like-minded people that want to experience this journey, and there was one individual in here that really connects with him. They build a pretty nice relationship. Even though they're oddly different in a lot of ways, they become really good friends. You go through this small journey with them, conquering different things and moving up within the world and the levels, and it turns out it's just a video game. It's just our main character playing as Prince within this video game. But what's kind of surreal about it is that because there's so much emphasis on this game and the dialogue or the friendships being made within it and how valuable that stuff can be, when we shift back to the main character in the real world, you see the harsh reality. You see why these relationships are important, and his family is in distraught. He is within distraught. His mother has passed away, and one can only assume that he was using this video game as an outlet for his emotions, for his stress, and just to simply escape reality for a time being, to find that comfort. And realistically, he did. I would be very interested to see how this would develop further. If you go more within the game world, or if you focus more on the real world, or intertwine them both, I'm not entirely sure. But supposedly it's a lot longer than what it actually is. It kind of seems like it's built as a short story, but 60, potentially 70 odd chapters there that could be done from start to finish, with obviously given enough time. I love this artwork too. There's some really great moments of brilliance within here, and seeing it grow and evolve over time would be a very beautiful thing. There's a great understanding of paneling and perception and framing different things, and great usage of color. It's a really, really great start for a story, and I wish all the best for the creator working on it. You've done a great job. And that is it. Finally, after all this time, 10 different amateur, self-published, independent creators and their works. The remaining 10 that I have picked out will be done within a future video. If you want to read anything on this list or leave some feedback for the creators, or maybe you are the creator watching, let me know. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts. Everything will be left in the description for your convenience. But with all of that, I want to thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe. I would wholeheartedly appreciate it. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.